Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So in today's video we have the iPhone 6 Plus. Now this is a 6 Plus. As you can see, we do not have the S badge down there. So this is the iPhone 6 Plus, and this particular device does run a very old version of iOS. As you can see, the App Store icon and the iTunes Store icons are the older versions. So it is currently running iOS 9.3.5, and I was really lucky to get this for dirt cheap on eBay. So in today's video, I want to have a look at the 6 Plus, compare it in terms of 2020, and also talk about performance of iOS 9 on an older device in 2020. So let's begin. Now the iPhone 6 Plus, in terms of design, I really like the design of the iPhone 6 Plus. It's one of the thinnest designed iPhones Apple has ever made. Now it is a huge device that displays 5.5 inches, but it's a gorgeous 1080p panel. It is LCD, and it is not laminated to the glass, so you do have those air gaps. You do not get the P3 wide color gamut. Despite all of that, the display, I have to say, even though in direct sunlight, is still quite easily visible to the eye. You do not get those higher levels of brightness, but it's still quite decent when you look at the display outdoors. Now, in terms of color reproduction and viewing angles, I have to say it is quite good. I really do enjoy it. And also one thing you have to note is that the 6 Plus does not offer you features like True Tone. Furthermore, the display isn't pressure sensitive, so you do not get the haptic touch or the 3D touch menus. But of course, once you update it to iOS 13, you will get it, but unfortunately the 6 Plus does not support iOS 13. So moving ahead, in terms of performance, the iPhone 6 Plus is powered by the Apple A8 processor, co-paired with the M8 Co-Motion processor, and just got 1GB of RAM. Now that 1GB of RAM in 2020 is pretty much the Achilles heel of the iPhone 6 Plus. Now, as you can see, you can start multitasking, you can start getting into applications here and there. It's nice and smooth, no issues whatsoever. But once you start filling up that 1GB of RAM with a lot of applications, that's where you're gonna notice a lot of reloads for almost all your applications. So that is the only reason that 1GB of RAM is the only reason that the 6 Plus pretty much did not get iOS 13. And let's just try loading PUBG right here, and let's just give it a second. And once the game loads, most of the time I have noticed that the previous apps that were loaded do tend to reload, since PUBG does take about quite a bit of RAM. Now, other than that, I have to say that performance hasn't been a big issue for me. Now, I could say that because this 6 Plus does run an older version of iOS, so obviously it will perform much better than the newer versions. But again, I will be doing a speed test between iOS 9 versus iOS 12, so stay tuned for that as well. Now, looking at app support, now iOS 9 in 2020, I'm surprised that it's still pretty useful. I was able to download almost all social media applications as well as YouTube. Now you can do this provided your Apple ID has already been associated with these apps on older versions of iOS. Only then you do get the option to download older versions of these applications. Now also, I was really surprised to see that PUBG Mobile is also fully supported on iOS 9 and is completely playable on the iPhone 6 Plus. So that really blew my mind. As you can see, PUBG is completely reloaded again as due to that RAM restriction. Now, other than that, I really don't have an issue. iOS 9 has been nice and quick. As you can see, the animations are completely different when you compare it to iOS 12. And I really do miss these animations. As you can see, the App Store is really nice and quick, as well as other applications are really nice and quick. And overall, I have to say that I really do enjoy using iOS 9. Now, looking at the cameras of the 6 Plus, the cameras again are a bit of a disappointment for 2020. The rear is an 8 megapixel shooter, whereas on the front you've got a 1.2 megapixel camera. Now, on the rear, the camera experience, again, looking at the application, is pretty much basic. You've got all your basic features right here. You do not have any of the newer versions. You do not have any of the newer lighting effects or anything like that. It's pretty much bare bones, again, when it comes to the camera application. Furthermore, since it's just got 8 megapixels, and you're not gonna be able to expect great low light photos, so most of your photos in low light will turn out grainy. However, there is one positive on the camera side. During video you do get the option for optical image stabilization, so basically you will be getting a smoother video experience when you shoot on the 6 Plus. Another downfall when it comes to video is that the 6 Plus does not offer you 4K video recording. You can only record video max at 1080p. So again, that is a bit of a letdown when it comes to that. Now looking at the front facing camera as well, it's just 1.2 megapixels. So that again is pretty poor for 2020. Other than that, the camera again, guys, is just okay. Now looking at the 6 Plus in 2020, well, my frank opinion, I wouldn't recommend anyone look at the 6 Plus in 2020. Forget about picking it up. But if you've got a 6 Plus in 2020, I guess it's still a great secondary device. I mean, as long as you do have app support, you can use it as a secondary device. One of my main uses of the 6 Plus for 2020 is basically as a media device, just because of that large 5.5 inch LCD panel that's 1080p, and it really does add to the overall experience when you are watching videos or playing games. So most probably it will be a basic media consumption device along with some social media, and that is the only reason I would recommend the 6 Plus in 2020, because if you look at the device overall, you are missing quite a bit of features right now for 2020. As I mentioned, the camera, because it's 8 megapixels, it is quite a letdown. You lose out a lot of features on the camera. You have that 1 gigabyte of RAM, which again does fill up really quickly and takes away from the experience. You do have Touch ID first generation. Now again, this is not going to be super fast or as reliable as those newer versions of Touch ID on the iPhone 6s, 7 and 8, so you will have to keep your finger on there for a few more seconds. Also, you do have just one downward firing speaker, not a dual firing speaker. So again, when you are playing games or watching media, you do tend to cover up the speaker, and that again does take away from the overall experience. Now look at the battery life as well. This particular 6 Plus hasn't been used a lot, so the battery life is still quite decent on it. But even when the 6 Plus did come out, the battery life was pretty good. Now if you do have a 6 Plus, there is a good chance that your battery would be pretty much worn out and you would need to replace the battery. But again, once you do replace the battery, you can expect quite decent battery life from the iPhone 6 Plus. So overall, guys, this is the 6 Plus for 2020, and I guess with iOS 9 it does enhance the experience. Yes, you do miss a lot of features from iOS, but I guess you do still retain reliability. You do still retain speed, the good animations, and overall the amount of strain it does put on the processor and battery life is much lesser when you compare it to new versions of iOS. So again, stay tuned for that video comparing the iPhone 6 on iOS 12 versus the 6 Plus on iOS 9. So there you go, guys, the iPhone 6 Plus for iOS on iOS 9 in 2020. I would just highly not recommend it at all. So that's it, guys. I hope you did like the video. If you did, hit that like button and that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.